My assistant texted me 3 times before I even pulled into my parents' driveway for Christmas Eve dinner. Emily never spammed messages unless something serious was happening. I glanced at the screen one last time before locking my phone. Board approved. Call me ASAP. I slipped the phone into my coat pocket and stepped out into the freezing Chicago air. The Carter family house looked exactly the same as it had my entire life. Perfect lights, perfect lawn, perfect image. Inside, same old disappointment waiting for me at the dinner table. The second I walked in, my father looked me up and down like he was inspecting a stranger. "Olivia finally made it," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. My younger brother Ryan smirked from the couch. "Traffic to bad downtown?" he asked. "Something like that." Mom kissed my cheek quickly before rushing back toward the kitchen. She always moved faster when Dad was in one of his moods. The smell of turkey and cinnamon filled the house, and somehow, it still didn't feel warm. Dinner started normally, for about 7 minutes. Then my father began. "So," he said while carving the turkey, "you still doing that computer thing?" I took a sip of water. "I work in tech, Dad." Ryan laughed into his wine glass. "Tech," he repeated. "That could mean literally anything." Dad pointed his fork at me. "She never explains what she actually does because she knows it sounds ridiculous." Nobody said anything. Not my mother. Not my Aunt Diane. Not even Ryan's wife Lauren. I'd seen this movie too many times. Dad leaned back in his chair. "You know Ryan just got promoted again." Ryan smiled immediately. "Senior operations manager at Sneered Industries." He practically glowed every time Dad mentioned his title. "They gave him another bonus this quarter," Dad continued proudly. "That's what stability looks like." Ryan shrugged modestly. "It's been a good year." Then Dad looked directly at me. "Meanwhile, Olivia's still renting apartments downtown, pretending startups are real careers." A few awkward laughs circled the table. I felt my phone vibrate again. "Emily?" Again. I ignored it. Dad shook his head dramatically. "You're 31 years old. No husband. No house. No kids. Honestly, leave. What's the long-term plan here?" I cut another piece of turkey slowly. "I'm doing fine." "Fine isn't success," he snapped immediately. Ryan jumped in. "She's probably making decent money at least." Dad scoffed. "Doing what?" "Fixing passwords for people." That got a louder laugh from 2 uncles at the far end of the table. I smiled slightly, because the funny part, that's genuinely what they thought I did. For 12 years, my family believed I worked some average IT support job. I never corrected them. At first because I was too busy building my company. Later, because watching them underestimate me became strangely useful. Dad stabbed another piece of turkey. "I told you years ago to study accounting. Something practical." "You also told me computer science was for men," I reminded him calmly. He waved his hand dismissively. "And was I wrong? Look at you now." My phone buzzed again. This time Ryan noticed. "Wow," he said. "Busy night at the help desk." More laughter. I finally pulled the phone out. 3 unread messages. "Emily, call me immediately." "Nathan, Sneered numbers worse than expected." "Claire, press release finalized." A cold calm settled into my chest. The timing was almost unbelievable. Dad kept talking. "You know what your problem is, Olivia. Pride. You always thought you were smarter than everyone." I looked up slowly. "No," I said quietly. "I just stopped needing your approval." That shut the table up for exactly 3 seconds. Then Dad laughed. "Approval? Honey, you're still trying to prove yourself." "Maybe once. Not anymore." Halfway through dinner, Ryan leaned closer. "You know," he said quietly, "if things are getting rough financially, I could probably help get you into admin at Sneered." I almost laughed. Instead, I smiled politely. "That's generous." Dad nodded approvingly. "See, Ryan understands family." I stared at my wine glass. If only they knew. If only they knew Sneered Industries would belong to me before New Year's, and Ryan's department would be one of the first reviewed. My phone buzzed again. This time, I stood. "Excuse me," I said calmly. "I need to take this." Dad rolled his eyes. "Of course. Tech emergency." As I walked toward the hallway, I heard Ryan mutter. "She probably forgot someone's Wi-Fi password." The table erupted again. Inside the downstairs bathroom, I locked the door and answered Emily immediately. "Tell me." "They moved the timeline up," she said fast. "Sneered accepted the final offer." I closed my eyes slowly. "When?" "Saturday morning. Official announcement Monday." Earlier than expected. Much earlier. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Same dark hair, same sharp jaw. Same girl my father once called unrealistic for wanting more than a safe office job. Except now, I owned a tech company worth $9 billion. And in 48 hours, my father's company would become one of our acquisitions. "Leave?" Emily asked carefully. You there? Yeah. You okay? I smiled at my reflection. Better than okay. Back at the table, dessert had started. Dad was explaining Steel Ridge's strong future to Uncle Mark. The company's solid, he said proudly. Been around 60 years. Not like these fake tech companies. I almost choked on my pie. Ryan noticed my expression. What? Nothing, I said smoothly. Just thinking. About what? How your entire division is about to be audited by people who report directly to me. Instead, I said, about how fast things can change. Later that night, I finally left. Dad called after me as I grabbed my coat. Drive safe in that old Toyota. I smiled without correcting him. The Toyota wasn't even mine. I'd borrowed it intentionally. Let them believe the story they already created. The drive back downtown took 30 minutes. By the time I reached my building, snow had started falling across Chicago. The doorman greeted me immediately. Good evening, Ms. Carter. I stepped into the private elevator and finally exhaled. The doors opened directly into my condo overlooking Lake Michigan. Floor-to-ceiling windows. City lights everywhere. Quiet. Real quiet. Not the tense silence from my parents' house. The peaceful kind. I kicked off my boots and finally opened my laptop. The acquisition documents filled the screen. Nova Core Systems acquiring Steel Ridge Industries for $290 million. I scrolled through executive personnel files. Thomas Carter, Director of Logistics. Salary, $194,000. Ryan Carter, Senior Operations Manager. Performance rating, consistent but limited innovation. I leaned back slowly. The irony was unreal. The same people who spent years treating me like a failure were now employees at a company I owned. My phone rang again. Emily, we need final approval tonight. You have it? And leave? Yeah, you should prepare yourself. Monday's going to explode. She wasn't wrong. By Monday morning, every business outlet in America would know my name, and my father would realize the daughter he mocked at Christmas dinner had quietly built an empire. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to subscribe to Real Spill and turn on notifications. Stories like this get even crazier by the end. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. I dressed carefully. Charcoal suit, black heels, minimal jewelry, professional, controlled, and touchable. At 6:30 a.m., the press release went live. Nova Core Systems acquires Steel Ridge Industries in major expansion deal. Within minutes my phone exploded. Bloomberg, CNBC, Forbes, Wall Street Journal. Interview requests flooded in nonstop. Then came the call I'd been waiting for. Dad. I let it ring twice before answering. Olivia Carter speaking. Silence. Then breathing. Heavy breathing. Finally, what the hell is this? His voice sounded completely broken. What part? They're saying you own Novacore. I do. They're saying your company bought Steel Ridge. Yes. Another silence. Longer this time. Then, this isn't funny. I walked toward my windows overlooking the lake. It's not a joke, Dad. You expect me to believe you're some billionaire CEO? Turn on CNBC. You lied to us. No, I corrected calmly. You assumed things about me for 12 years and never bothered asking if they were true. I heard him breathing harder. You bought my company. Novacore acquired Steel Ridge because it was profitable strategically. But you know I worked there. Yes. And Ryan. Yes. His voice cracked slightly. Oh my God. For the first time in my entire life, my father sounded small. We'll talk later, I said calmly. I have interviews scheduled all morning. Olivia. And Dad. What? You should probably start preparing for restructuring reviews. I hung up. The next 3 days were chaos. News coverage everywhere. Business articles, financial interviews, photo shoots, and behind the scenes, our transition teams were tearing through Steel Ridge's financials. The results were ugly. Outdated systems, massive inefficiencies, overpaid management, especially in logistics, especially in my father's division. By Wednesday morning, our operations director, Andrew Cole, was leading formal evaluations inside Steel Ridge headquarters. I watched remotely from my office. Dad sat rigidly at the conference table. Ryan looked pale. Andrew clicked through slide after slide. Current operational costs exceed industry standards by 34%. Another slide. Management redundancy significantly above optimal structure. Another slide. Immediate restructuring recommended. Ryan's face looked physically sick. Dad stared at the table the entire time. Then came the final blow. Several senior management positions will likely be eliminated or reduced. Silence. Absolute silence. For the first time in his career, my father couldn't talk his way out of consequences. That night he came to my office. Security called first. Your father is downstairs. I stared out the window for a long moment, then said, Send him up. When the elevator doors opened, he looked older. Much older. His expensive confidence was gone. So was Ryan's smugness. Dad stepped into my office carefully. The room itself seemed to intimidate him. The skyline, the glass walls, the employees moving outside, the scale of everything. You really built all this? He asked quietly. Yes. He sat down slowly. I don't understand how I didn't know. You never wanted to know. Pain crossed his face instantly. That's not fair. No. I leaned forward slightly. When I got intimate, you called it unrealistic. You dropped out. To build Novacore. You never explained that. You never listened. He opened his mouth, closed it again. For once, he had no speech prepared. No lecture. No superiority. Just silence. Finally he whispered, "You're going to fire us. I'm going to run my company properly. Ryan has a baby coming. Ryan also has one of the weakest performance reports in his division. He's your brother." And? Dad stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. You've changed? I shook my head slowly. No. You just never knew who I actually was. That hit him hard. Really hard. For a second I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered every family dinner. Every insult. Every joke. Every time he made me feel small so Ryan could feel important. Dad leaned forward desperately. You could protect us. I could. Hope flashed across his face instantly. But I won't. His shoulders collapsed. Why? Because nobody protected me. Silence. Heavy silence. Then quietly, I thought I was helping you. No, I said softly. You were controlling me. His eyes filled with something close to regret. Real regret. But it came years too late. When he finally stood to leave, he paused near the door. I really was proud of you once, he said quietly. I looked at him for a long moment. Then you had a strange way of showing it. After he left, I stood alone in my office watching snow fall over the city. And honestly, I expected to feel guilt. I didn't. Friday afternoon the restructuring became official. Thomas Carter, reduced to advisory consultant role. Ryan Carter, position eliminated. 41 additional management positions were restructured. Steelridge's profits improved almost immediately. 6 months later, Novacore's stock was up 17%. Steelridge was finally profitable again. Dad still worked part-time. Quietly, no more speeches, no more arrogance. Ryan moved to another state with Lauren and their daughter. And one night, months later, I got a text from an unknown number. Dad, I finally read everything about Novacore. I understand now. I'm sorry for all the years I underestimated you. I stared at the message for a long time, then locked my phone without replying. Some apologies arrive after the damage is already done, and some people only learn your value after losing access to you completely. That night I stood by my windows overlooking Lake Michigan while fireworks exploded across the skyline. The city glittered beneath me, calm, quiet, mine, and for the first time in years, I truly felt free. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Real Spill for more dramatic family betrayals, revenge stories, and shocking life twists. And let me know in the comments, did Olivia go too far? Or did her family finally face the consequences of their own actions?